make sure to check the timestamps in the description. Alright guys, last night Riot dropped this massive PB patch, 13.10 mid-season, which is covering dozens of items going over multiple classes. Big patch. So I am going to perform surgery on Riot Games and dissect everything for you guys. Sit here and listen and you will understand every single change perfectly, to the detail, everything. Let's just go. First up, I'm starting with the Marksman class because this covers the most amount of changes. Let's go over the components. The Shard went from 15 attack speed to 15 AD, lost a bit of 1k. This is just straight up a buff in terms of gold efficiency, wave clear, ratios, whatever. Recurve Bow is getting a pretty big buff, very cheap now, very easy to itemize, and it does magic damage. So if you are up against someone that will itemize Warden's Mail, Steel Caps, obviously people naturally have lower magic resist than armor, then it's going to stay more relevant. Of course it depends what items it builds into, if you can rush them. Well, Heartbound Axe becomes very slightly more gold efficient, but it still gives a very low amount of AD. So when you build into Trinity Force, there's very little AD in the build path, so champions with high AD ratios will struggle building in Trinity Force even more now. Although it's cheap, it helps run people down with the movement speed. If you can base on 800 gold as a Darius, for example, it's pretty useful, I would say. Not the worst change, it's fine. They also ended up significantly nerfing Zeal, which I don't mind because Zeal was a very strong component. So I understand that their logic probably is that they're pulling power away from Zeal to add power in other places to the items. So for example, they are nerfing Zeal, but they're buffing Rapidfire, they're buffing Runaan, they're buffing PD. So that makes sense to me. Zeal was already very gold efficient, so it's not a big deal. You pretty much get the movement speed for free anyway. Let's go over the Marksman Mythics. So, Infinity Edge is now a Mythic. Pretty much the same item, except it doesn't require 40% anymore. Technically you can rush it, though I don't recommend it. It's not optimal in most cases because, especially in solo queue, BFs for the early game is hard to come by. And even though you'll have the crit damage, you don't have much crit, so it's mostly a second item still. And there will be options to buy as a first item now, you'll see in the legendary system now. The Mythic passive is pretty good, it just synergizes well with Infinity Edge. Crit, chance, crit damage. Then we have Navori Quickblades, pretty much the same item. I could make like a whole video about Navori Quickblades. The item overall is toxic, and Xayah is the main abuser of it because it removes her weakness of being cooldown gated. She can have Perma W, Perma E, Perma Snare, Perma Proc her passive. You know, she just scales too well with that. You don't really have a window to punish Xayah. She always has 30% movement speed, 20% damage increase, and 55% attacks. It's not a good time, guys. It's not a good time. Obviously, something like Lucian can use this, for example. Might be his best mythic. We'll see how it goes. Then we have Galeforce, which I think is a lot better now, because think about it. The trade-off of giving up Infinity Edge isn't as painful as giving up old Kraken Slayer, plus Galeforce itself now is better. It has lower cooldown, better mythic passive, it gives 7% movement speed, which is huge. It just makes you very nimble, and overall, as a first item, it's going to pretty much deal more damage than Infinity Edge, just with the active alone, because you're not going to get many crits off in fights. Like, yeah, maybe you get like 1-2 crits here and there in an actual fight. That's your first item, of course. Then Infinity Edge is going to get stronger and stronger at 3rd, 4th, 5th item, but Galeforce will win you the game before you get to that point. That's what I mean. So, when you compare it to current Kraken Slayer, well, yeah, Galeforce is pretty shit, but you'll have other DPS options, including Kraken Slayer being a legendary and so on. I think Galeforce is a lot better now. Definitely. And then, let's have a look at this. Guinsoo's Rageblade. Now, all I can say is that people are overhyping this item a bit. There's nothing too special about it. Yes, it's very nice. A lot of champions that want to use it have ability power ratios, and Riot is adding some ability power ratios to champions like Vayne, Akshan, Kalista, I think. Which is fine, whatever. But now you have to stack it. It's more expensive. It's more of a scaling item. It does magic damage though, which is very interesting. especially when you consider that you get Hybrid Pen later on. It's very, very close to old Guinsoo from Season 10, if you guys remember that item. Except instead of getting the pen as you buy it, you get the pen later through the Mythic passive. And it gives a bit different stats. It gives less attack speed and a bit more raw stats. Yeah, the item is definitely very good and you can work on a lot of stuff like Kale, Teemo, Irelia, maybe some bruisers into like full tank with Guinsoo, I don't know. But it's nothing too special, like nothing crazy, nothing out of this world, nothing too broken. I think that is going to be completely fine. Let's get into some legendaries now. So we have Bloodthirster, and Riot switched it from a defensive option, which is going to be the new Shieldbow as a legendary anyway, to something more offensive. Which is especially good if you play like a long range champion. 95 AD in late game is kind of crazy. You can be safer on something like Caitlyn, Jinx, even Senna. Obviously, I think even Draven will love this, just sustaining and being able to have high AD. And Bloodthirster was getting really annoying when you combine it with Overheal and other defensive options and enchanters. So I really like this change by Riot Games. It makes the game healthier, gives Bloodthirster a new purpose. Pretty cool, pretty cool. Now, Collector, you might be like, oh, it's just 6 lethality, that's not a big deal, but it pretty much makes the item a competitive option. Well, because now it competes with the other legendaries way better. So it's going to be ideal on a lot of these pseudo assassins, even stuff like Rengar who auto attacks a lot, and even skills with crit right now on Q, I believe. It's like a flat damage increase. You have Akshan, you have Queen, and you have to consider other champions like Misfortune, for example. You can rush this on Misfortune if you think about it, because let's say you want as much damage as possible on your ultimate. You go Collector, you get a Dirk and Pickaxe early, very good build path. It's going to give you like a little bit of Execute, that's fine. Then you go Infinity Edge and LER or Motor Reminder for even more pen and crit. And that's going to just massively boost your ult damage, more than any other item. So definitely Collector has a purpose now, simply because it has more stats, not because of the passive or anything. And even if you play something like Samira, for example, let's say you don't play against tanks, and it is like pretty squishy, you can just rush Collector. It's gonna be better than Infinity Edge, I believe, in most cases. Especially the build path. Yeah, I mean, the build path is just gonna break the deal, pretty much. You can go like Collector, Infinity Edge into Shieldbow, into LDR. Not sure about this Bloodthirster, maybe you can still build that. I mean, your nuke initially, when you're pretty healthy, is going to deal a lot of damage. So yeah, sounds good. That looks like the new Samira build to me. And then you have this Kraken Slayer, which is pretty much a joke in the sense that the item is so overtuned that it can get to like 600 damage in late game. And even with like 2 items, it does 300 damage, as long as you stack it. But I like the logic here. It's not an item that you can randomly buy, probably. You have to play against tanky targets, so you get to stack multiple Kraken Slayer procs on them, because that is how it's going to work, right? But right now I think it's overtuned, it just does way too much damage. This is barely going to get nerfed. Though I like it a lot in the sense of the niche. It's a good job by Riot. And now you have a legendary option that can compete in terms of DPS with Pendant Dancer, which is now more of a utility option. And it used to be the best DPS item, of course. In that sense, it's very nice. LDR simply does extra damage if you deal magic damage, so Kraken Slayer is magic damage now. I really hated that it was true damage. Now you can at least itemize against it. Very nice. But if you play Zeri, Kog'Maw, you're going to deal extra damage. Now with LDR, pretty good. All the Reminder got something small as well, I guess. Maybe because they were like, oh, we gave LDR something, so might as well buff Motor Reminder by 5 AD. Not a big deal, it's fine. Phantom Dancer is getting a new build path. This is really good. I think, yeah, it's just a buff, more stats, better build path overall. Yeah, not bad, not bad. Of course, Zeal gets nerfed, but overall PD is buff. Stormrazor. Again, you gotta compare Stormrazor, like, when would you buy this item? The main purpose it is like kite and chase. It doesn't even have the slow anymore, so you can like catch people off easily. Because would you rather have the collector over Stormrazor? I think you would. The item is like gold efficient, by the way, it's like around 100%. But it's nothing too crazy. It gives a good amount of AD though. It's hard to have an opinion on this. The passive doesn't deal crazy damage. It scales alright with AD, but again, nothing too crazy. I'm just wondering, why not just have the Kraken Slayer over this? It just does a lot more damage, even if you don't auto-attack a lot. Maybe you really like this one like Jhin. We'll see, guys, we'll see. I generally don't know what to say about it. Rapidfire Cannon. This is a straight up buff. Yes, the item is more expensive, but you get AD. Here's the thing, guys. AD carries don't give a fuck about attack speed. There are so many random sources from which you can get attack speed, like attack speed boost, little tempo, alacrity, other random items that come with attack speed. Having 30 AD for like what, 15% attack speed, you basically lost like 500 gold value in order to gain 1050 gold value, and it's a bit more expensive. But like I said, this 30 AD is going to mean that every time you crit, it's like 52.5 extra damage. Yeah, Rapidfire Cannon is just simply buff. And Rapidfire Cannon is more of a late game item anyway, which is when this kind of price difference doesn't matter as much. When you buy the second item, yeah, it's a bit awkward, but when you buy it 4th, 5th, or 3rd, it's not that painful. You just farm for like an extra 1 or 2 minutes, and it's fine. Rapidfire Cannon obviously very situational item anyway. Runaan's Hurricane gains some on-hit damage, becomes a bit more expensive. The AoE is a bit bigger as well. Just an overall solid buff. Yeah, not much to say. Runaan is just buff. And then Shieldbow. The shield is a bit nerfed. But do you actually mind it? I think it's completely fine. It does the same purpose. It's not too expensive, so it can come as a reaction quite fast. Still has the life steal, so you can use it as a sustain item. The attack speed is a bit weird for a champion like Samira, but that's pretty much it. Samira. At this point, they should make Samira R-scale with attack speed, I think, and tune some numbers so she gets some value from this and attack speed boost. She's not gonna itemize attack speed items anyway, so who cares? Yeah, overall, like, Shieldbow serves the same purpose. It was a bit awkward for a lot of champions to build Shieldbow first. They just wanted the shield later on, like late game. So this is pretty good change by Riot. Scimitar simply gets some magic resist. I mean, I think the item was a bit overshadowed by just other crit items, like Bloodthirster, for example. So this is completely fine. Especially considering there will be a lot of magic damage from Kraken Slayer and Guinsoo when people go for those items on these on-hit champions. I don't think they're adding too much magic damage in the system. Obviously, they're removing the true damage, which was a bit candy. Some people are like, well, every AD carry is getting magic damage, but not really, man. It's mostly these on-hit champions. Numbers can only be changed, like I said, Kraken Slayer looks broken. And then you have Statikk Shiv, but this item doesn't strike me as too interesting. It's 100% gold efficient. I looked into it. And then you get the passive, which does like decent damage. It doesn't even crit. It scales with AP. Yeah, just nothing crazy. But it has a solid build path. Maybe you're supposed to rush this on Yasuo and Yone now, just because your first item would suck. I don't know, guys. Yeah, it could be an angle. You could go like Statikk Shiv into Infinity Edge or Galeforce into a Shieldbow into whatever other defensive items or Bloodthirster. I don't know if it's that good though. It might need a buff. Just looking at it on paper. We'll see though, we'll see. Oh, I just realized you can probably build Kraken Slayer on Yasuo and Yone and it's gonna deal a lot of damage, man. You can proc that stuff really often with a little tempo plus the Q is gonna proc it because it's on hit. Whoa, that just sounds a bit disgusting right now. Never mind Statikk Shiv. Yeah, it's hard to see Statikk Shiv and Stormrazor being too useful. They just might need either more of a niche thing, like for example Statikk Shiv could I don't know, I don't even get an idea. Like Statikk Shiv could increase the damage the enemy team takes by like 7% or something every time it procs the chain lightning effect. Kind of like an AoE PTA, but nothing too crazy. Like around a 7%, 8% something would be interesting. And then it's like more of a supportive item as well, on top of giving you wave. Like for something like Queen, just going in silent and one-shotting waves, it's pretty good. Being able to roam faster, but other than that, it's kind of a weird item. Right, moving on to the support items, we got these new components that actually build the most support items. The Chalice and the Pendant. They are both pretty useful in terms of staying. And these champions that play the war of attrition in bot lane, stuff like Soraka, Sona, Alistar with the Pendant, they're gonna be really happy with these items. Not bad, not bad. Okay, support mythics. This is the only new support mythic. Brand new. Echoes of Helia. I think I figured this item out pretty well. So basically, you want to make sure as an enchanter that you can hit people constantly. And when is that going to happen? When it's like a front to back teamfight, the enemy team has some frontliners, maybe you have some frontliners, and as a Lulu or Janna or something, you are allowed to auto-take quite a bit in order to build stacks, just cast spells for free, and so on. Obviously something like Karma that can constantly spam Q and be a bit safer, can also stack this item faster. But if the fights are fast against assassins and dive, anti-dive, I don't think this item does much. Obviously the damage, it also can be body blocked, so it's even more incentivized to be used against frontliners, because the frontliner is going to be the target to take it, because it's the nearest enemy champion, by the way, if you haven't read it properly. Yeah, that's pretty much how you should use this item, because Moonstone, it's going to get updated, but that version is going to be way better than enchanters for all the other situations. So you gotta be pretty careful you pick this item, because if you can't collect soul shards, then you're not gonna get value, so it's gonna be pretty shit. Or you get like something very small, whereas if you buy it in a proper game, then you're going to get like really big value. Very cool item though. So both Locket and Evenshroud receive the same treatment. They are building out of Pendant, and they gain a lot of health regen in exchange for haste. On top of that, 100 gold cheaper, the Locket shield got a bit buffed. Very good changes for this item, especially in the laning phase. You're gonna get a health regen and they are more durable later. You don't really care about the haste, especially at one item. You mostly focus around using your first rotation as fast as possible and engaging. Later on, you can grab some haste items anyway. You can also go into the 8 haste rune, you can grab cooldown boots even. It's not that big of a deal. Very good changes to Locket and Evenshroud. Shurelya received some small changes. It's 200 gold cheaper, has 5 less AP, which is overall a pretty big buff in terms of the stats, but it lost 5% movement speed on the passive, which in most cases doesn't really matter that much. Then it gave 5% movement speed on the active. I would say this is maybe a very slight buff, overall a pretty neutral change. Very rarely it will end up being a very slight nerf, I think. Overall, Shurelya is the same item. Moonstone Renewer, reworked passive, it makes heals and shields bounce. If the ally is alone, so like only you and the ally, you are gonna get a smaller amount of heal and shield, which is interesting. And instead of like giving you the old like heal increase on the passive, you get ability haste. It's also 200 gold cheaper, 5 less CP. Overall, I'll say it's pretty solid item. I mean, it just does what it's supposed to do. Extra heal and shield. It's kind of a boring passive, I would say. You don't have to do anything, literally just play the game as you normally would. Old Moonstone had some skill involved with it. You could time your procs a bit, try to maintain the stacks and so on. But yeah, this will definitely be a lot stronger than the Echoes of Helia or whatever in most games, I would say, because that one requires some specific things to happen, right? Pretty good item though. Alright, so they straight up Giga buffed Ardent Censer. It does a lot more on-hit damage, it's way cheaper, and it grants movement speed. Why is movement speed really good on enchanters, guys? Because you want to be able to position and kind of chase your allies, and also kite out sometimes. So movement speed is always going to be an amazing set on enchanters if you can get it for free like Ardent Censer. And I believe all Ardent Censer used to have movement speed as well, right? So this is definitely a very nice change, very cheap. And you want to build this item when you either have like a very strong hyper carry that's not going to take too much damage, so you don't need protection, or you're playing against a lot of frontliners, because Ardent Censer is pretty much an anti-tank support item in my eyes. Then we have Mandate, no longer a mythic, now legendary. This can be really good for some mages, not just enchanters. I could see this working on Zara. You go Leandris into Mandate. It's pretty cheap, has a decent amount of AP and haste. Base mana regen is kind of whatever, but it still has this strong effect where you can deal a lot of damage with your ally and it grants movement speed. You pretty much get Shurelya's passive for free on this Mandate. So yeah, I really don't mind it. It says mythic, but that's just a bug, trust me guys, it's a legendary now. Mikhail has been changed a bit overall. It's pretty neutral, doesn't matter too much. Putrifier, it's just cheaper, just does the job. You shouldn't build this item in most cases anyway because it no longer works with shields. Redemption, I think, is a bit nerfed, except that you get more healing on the active. But losing the ability haste just feels like a pretty big nerf to me. I don't understand this change too much. Am I really missing something? I mean, it has the harmony, you're gonna get the base regen, but I don't think that's better than just having ability haste on this item. Especially if you build like a Locket or an Evenshroud and those have no ability haste. It's kinda hard to go redemption. Staff of Flowing Water is very similar to Ardent Censer here, pretty much just a buff item. Instead of buffing auto-attackers, you're buffing casters with this item. Again, it's like literally the same item with a different niche. Night's Vow is also getting Giga buff, has the new component into it. Night's Vow might even be pretty decent as a rush, like why not just rush this item? In some cases, I see no problem with it, seems pretty good. This Convergence got a similar buff as well, just Giga buff. Yeah, very good changes to these items, not a big deal. We also ended up getting a few changes to some assassin items. Yuumu's Ghostblade is now a mythic, and Peroscro has been made into a legendary with a different effect. So, I think Yuumu's Ghostblade is just way healthier as an item compared to Peroscro. And it can even be more powerful. Having the map mobility, 50 movement speed, and then you get some lethality which makes up for losing the Prowler Scroll active, which by the way is very long cooldown. This lethality increases way shorter cooldown. Yeah, overall just a solid item. Talon, Rengar, Kayn, they're all going to be amazing with this item, in most cases. And it feels the same niche, where you want to just have a lot of power to track down a single target, kill it. The legendary per legendary item mythic passive 8 AD is just decent, a lot healthier than, you know, stacking 10 million lethality and having insane percentage damage in late game. Okay, let's have a look at Prologue's go first. Spoiler alert, Duskblade doesn't have a slow anymore. The slow has been moved to this new Prologue and has been doubled as well. It's a pretty long slow. The first champion that comes to mind is Zed. Zed with this and with Yomu, he can run at you with a lot of movement speed, press R, slow you, land triple shuriken, and you die. Sounds fun. Also Rengar, slow sounds pretty good on the auto attack. If you flash away, you still get caught and die. Overall, the item does like pretty balanced damage, it's nothing too crazy. It's like a Shin proc. And then has decent stats. Solid. And now, the very controversial Duskblade, because, you know, thousands of people on Twitter are crying when they see the untargetable. Oh my god, it's so fucking broken! I cannot play. Guys, I'm just saying, this is just an opinion. It's hard to argue about it, but stealth is just going to be better in most cases. Because you can reposition. They don't know your intention. You could go for a kill, you could escape. Duskblade is really annoying as it is simply because of the stealth. If they were untargetable, you see them, and yes, you can hit them for 1.5 seconds, but who cares? They're assassins, they get one shot anyway right after. That was the power of the stealth from Duskblade. It allowed you to have more options. And on top of that, this thing has a 10 seconds cooldown. The stealth, you know, you could stealth from target to target. You could be Mastery Penta killing them from fucking stealth. I don't know why people are overreacting. Like, it's nothing crazy. Like, when you pick this item, you also have to realize that Yumu is really strong, Eclipse is really strong, so you give up those really good items for some random untargetability for 1.5 seconds that you might get, you might not even get, it might matter, it might not matter. Like, that's why people don't build Duskblade a lot. Most people think Duskblade is a trash item because, well, it's pretty unreliable, but at least Riot had good intentions with this item, which I love because it has a purpose now. You deal extra damage with your abilities for assassinations. Like, if you build this on Ezreal or Varus, you're not going to deal extra damage with your spells. No, they have to be low. I'm not saying they aren't able to use this item at all. Like, maybe it's good on Ezreal, maybe it's good on Lethality Varus, but it's not like broken on them or anything. Yeah, this passive just makes the item a lot more consistent for casters. And it's gonna end up dealing a lot of AoE damage as well, probably. It's just like spell damage, Kiana R, stuff like that. It's gonna deal more damage. So overall, I like this item. It's like pretty strong for team fighting. Just because you know you get a lot of spell damage. You gotta see how it interacts, because some champions deal more with spells, some champions deal more with auto attacks. But overall, you have to factor in that you are giving up power from the other lethality items. It's pretty cool though. I like this Duskblade. People on Twitter are still overreacting a bit too much. Like, wow, my god, guys, it's untargetable. I cannot play the game. Fucking Riot, ruining the game. So silly, man. Oh, and I forgot to mention, by the way, when you deal damage or use any spells, the invulnerability breaks just like the stealth. So you can't deal damage through invulnerability like a Kale ult or something. Okay, there are also some changes to a few tank items. Radiant Virtue is a lot cheaper, 500 gold. A little bit less healing, a bit more stats, but overall a huge buff to the item, especially with champions like Maokai, Zex, Johnny, Ornn. I think they went for this because they buffed Locket and Evenshroud quite a lot, so they aren't worried that Radiant Virtue will be built by supports. So they don't have to gate it so hard with the high price. Which overall is a very good change. Good job by Riot for acknowledging this, because Radiant Virtue was a pretty awkward spot where, yeah, most champions like Maokai are just gonna build Evenshroud and Locket if they're smart. A lot of people started building Evenshroud on champions like that anyway, because it simply was so cheap that you could go into your future items a lot faster. therefore getting more value out of items. Abyssal Mask also received a massive change, but I would prefer if it was like Bami Cinder plus Negatron, so you have more options in your build with Bami Cinder, because having an MR item option for Bami Cinder, since a lot of champions wanted to clear the jungle and wave clear in top lane, would be really nice. Even though you'd lose the wave clear when you upgrade it, maybe they should do it in a more elegant way or create a whole different item. It would be nice to have Bami's MR item. Whatever, Abyssal Mask is still a huge buff. It's gonna end up giving you about the same amount of magic resist as Force of Nature, which also got changed, you'll see. It's also buildable for supports. If you play Alistar, you can get this, like third item. If you got a bunch of HP items, so you get like some value from the pen. Amumu support, tech support, whatever, stuff like that. Leona, actually pretty nice with this item with her passive, all her abilities. And it also increases the damage of Guinsoo, Kraken Slayer with Sand, stuff like that. So it's a pretty solid item now. It might be the main MR item as long as you are magic damage with some magic damage. Force of Nature took a bit of a hit. It stacks slightly slower, doesn't give the percentage reduction, it's a bit more expensive. I guess they wanted to make mages a bit more useful because a lot of classes are getting small buffs, while mages are like whatever. Riot mentioned that they are gonna work on some mage changes in the future anyway, so I don't know. Either way, yeah. Abyssal Mask might outvalue Force of Nature all the time. I see Force of Nature more as a mobility item now. I would say that unless their team was like very heavy on magic damage, the passive wasn't reducing that much damage if you actually look at the numbers. You mostly bought it for like raw stats and just mobility. And it was overbought as well, even in pro play. Like, there were definitely games where Force of Nature, like, super overrated, doesn't get value. Also, people building Force of Nature for fun, or they're like, Glass Cannon, they get one shot, they go Force of Nature, they die before it even gets attacked. It's kind of silly. Either way, these changes are alright, they won't change the game too much. Last but not least, long heavy weighted, some fighter item buffs, because everything but Divine Thunderer is complete garbage. Speaking of Divine Thunderer, it's getting a minor touch. Loses some scaling against HP champions. Against squishy targets, it's pretty much the same. Moving on to Gordinker. Very slight buff, 100 gold, 25 HP on the mythic passive. Gordinker needs something more, man. They should just simply try to fill the niche of Survive Burst a bit better so it actually has a purpose. When you play against assassins and mages, you can try to counter their burst with this item. Something like that would be good. I'm not saying you should make it overpowered, but against DPS it should be shit, against burst it should be better. You could make it like a mini Rengar W, and that would, you know, give the item some power. Because currently, you simply build it for Iron Spike and 2 longswords on champion with high ratios. You try to snowball 1 or 2 kills with that, and make up for the fact that Divine Thunderer is like infinitely better than this item. It's just Gordinker on steroids. Yeah, Gordinker still kinda sucks, guys, I'm not gonna lie. But on the other hand, Tribeker received so much love. 10 AD for this item is huge, because what is the purpose of Tribeker? It's catching out a squishy target that is trying to kite you and bursting it in a combo. Like stuff like Set, Darius, Garen, right? Now you're going to be able to do that job a lot better, and it really suffered from stats. That's literally exactly what it needed, some attack damage. Nothing else, just some attack damage, and they gave it a generous amount of 10 AD. Very gold efficient as well, I believe now. Yeah, very good Tribeker buff. It's going to be a lot more buildable. You won't feel like you deal 0 damage when you build a utility item. Trinity Force also pretty massive buff in my opinion. 200 gold, 5 AD, and 5% attack speed. This is so good for Darius, Camille, Udyr, Ezreal. Just a lot of champions like that, especially since Divine Thunderer slightly went down in power and scaling. It's gonna match a bit better when you go Trinity Force dueling against a Divine Thunderer champion. I mean, the item literally says dueling here, guys, at the corner, so it shouldn't get fisted by Divine Thunderer every game. Either way, massive change. I mean, wow, Camille is gonna wreak some havoc next patch. We also got some legendary item changes. No more Morbius. It's Morbid time. It's a slight nerf, I would say. 100 gold is pretty nice, but from 5 seconds to 2.5 seconds shield duration, now mages have to wait a lot less for that shield to expire, which is gonna allow them to deal more DPS instead of holding cooldowns. And the cooldown itself is also bigger, so you don't just, you know, have it up every single team fight. Now, in certain team fights, you won't have it up, just like Shieldbow, just like Galeforce. So overall, this is a pretty big change to Malmortius. If you're a mage player, you should be happy about this, because it's a window of opportunity where you can punish it. Anyways, Statikk got some love. For 8 seconds you gain tenacity and size. Viagra, not bad, especially since they kept nerfing tenacity sources, which sometimes you don't even opt for. You just skip tenacity in some cases. And the last change of the patch is Hullbreaker. Well, Hullbreaker is just straight up getting a massive buff. 10 AD and 5% movement speed for 200 gold, and a wing moonplate slap there. So it's just something added. Like, it's just a buff build pet. Nothing to say about it. Movement speed of speed pushers is pretty huge. To dog a guy down and chase him, kill him, run away from people collapsing on you, rotating between lanes, getting faster to a side lane. It's just... movement speed is a good stat anyway in general. You just get it for free on Hullbreaker. I mean, you should be happy about this. They already gave you 10 free AD for like 10 AD for 200 gold is always nice. Huge Hullbreaker change. Alright, let's conclude the changes. So the marksman system is a lot better now. Why? Because look at the old mythic system. You had these mythics, but in reality, Shieldbow and Galeforce are pretty bad options unless you're a champion that can really use them as a core. And then Kraken Slayer outshines everything because it has the best build pad, it gives the best stats, gives the best early game, gives the best scaling, it's true damage, it's uncounterable by anything. You can anathema it, you can do anything for it. Yeah. And it just makes other items scale insanely well. So if you just remove Kraken Slayer, move it to a legendary, remove the true damage, make it magic damage, just a niche, then you can focus on the second part of the system, which is that most of the carries already had like some sort of second mythic, which is Infinity Edge, Navori, Guinsoo. So they just made the mythics, which is very nice. And they ended up, by making the system, affording to give some power back into Galeforce. So this item isn't so garbage. Now it's actually beatable in my opinion. And then you just leave Shieldbow for this defensive option in the system that you can, get later on, which makes a lot more sense. And they also did a good job at pulling power from some places, like nerfing Zeal and then giving something back to Zeal items in order to buff them, but they made them more expensive, so now you have to spend more gold. Like overall, except for the Kraken Slayer being a bit too overtuned right now on PvE, everything is pretty smooth. I don't think I would change much. Maybe some Statikk Shiv and Stormrazor buff, that's about it. For the support items, yeah, they are cheaper. Overall of buffs here and there. I don't know if support role is more power, but it's not a big of a deal. Maybe some of these items can be used here and there by other roles and other classes. On top of that, what else we have? Amazing fighter changes. Fighter items really needed some love. They have been garbage for way too long. I would like a system where the mythics are like Mo, Statikk, Desdance, maybe Hullbreaker, and then the others are legendaries. That would be cool as well. Something similar to the tank mythic rework. And yeah, we also have the assassin changes, which I really much enjoy. They made Duskblade more consistent. They removed the quote-unquote toxic interaction that they didn't like with the dash on Prolog. Made Yomo mythic. I like that as well. The new Prolog is cool. Yeah, very nice changes, guys. Not much to say. Good job, Riot Games. Let's hope they keep doing a good job. Hey, good job, Riot. Good job.